Tyran Stokes picking Kansas is not just another five-star going to a blue blood. This is Kansas landing the #1 player in the country. A player Kentucky badly wanted, a player Louisville had a real hometown connection to, and a player who already feels like one of the biggest stories in college basketball before he has even played a minute. And the reason this one hits different is because Stokes does not feel like a normal high school star. A lot of top recruits come in with hype, highlights, and big rankings, but you still have to imagine what they might become. With Stokes, you do not have to imagine as much. The body is already there. The skill is already there. The confidence is already there. The only question now is how fast Kansas can turn all of it into winning. He is 6'7", around 230 pounds, with the kind of frame that already looks built for college basketball. He is not one of those skinny wings where you say, give him 2 years in the weight room and maybe he's ready. Stokes already looks like he can walk into a Big 12 game and not get pushed around. That matters because the Big 12 is not a league where freshmen just get to float around and play pretty basketball. It is physical, it is older, it is tough, and if you're not ready for contact, you get exposed fast. Stokes is built for that part. He plays through contact, not away from it. When he gets downhill, he is not trying to avoid bodies. He is going right into them. And that's what makes him such a problem. If you put a smaller wing on him, he can overpower him. If you put a slower forward on him, he can attack off the bounce. And if help comes, that's where the passing starts to matter. That's the piece that separates him from a lot of big athletes. Stokes is not just some strong wing who runs in transition and dunks. He can actually read the floor. He can grab a rebound and push it himself. He can hit cutters. He can pass out of a drive. He can get into the paint, force the defense to collapse, and make the right play. He's not perfect with it yet, and sometimes he can try to do too much, but the feel is real. That's why Bill Self has to be excited. Kansas has had great players before. Kansas has had future NBA guys before. That program is not new to talent, but Stokes gives Self a different type of player. He is big enough to play as a forward, skilled enough to be used like a guard, and strong enough to create mismatches without needing the whole offense to stop for him. That kind of player changes how your team can play. Kansas can use him in a lot of ways. He can play on the wing, he can slide to the 4 in smaller lineups, he can start the break after a rebound, he can attack from the elbow, he can cut, post, pass, defend, and rebound. He does not have to be used in one boring role. That is why his fit is so interesting. The best version of Stokes at Kansas is not him just taking a bunch of shots while everyone's standing around. The best version is him touching the game in a bunch of different ways. That's what makes him dangerous. He can score, but he does not have to be only a scorer. That is important because in college, especially early, the shot might not always fall. There are going to be nights where teams back off him and make him prove he can hit jumpers. There are going to be nights where the lane is crowded. There are going to be nights where the whistle does not go his way. But even on those nights, Stokes can still impact the game if he is locked in. He can rebound, he can defend, he can push tempo, he can make the extra pass, he can get to the line. That is why his floor is high. The swing skill is the jumper. That is the part everyone is going to watch. If Stokes shoots it well enough from 3, the whole game opens up. Defenders will have to step closer, and once they do, he can drive right through them. But if teams do not respect the shot, they're going to sag off, pack the paint, and make him prove it. That does not mean he has to become an elite shooter overnight. He just has to be good enough that defenses cannot ignore him. The free throws matter too. A player like Stokes is going to get fouled. He's too strong and too physical not to. But if teams feel like fouling him is a smart play, that takes away some of his power. If he can turn those drives into points at the line, it makes him a lot harder to deal with. That might be the difference between him having a good freshman year and a great one. But with Stokes, the story is not only about basketball skill. His personality is a real part of this too. He is not some quiet, low-energy star who just blends into the background. He has presence. He plays with emotion. He carries himself like someone who knows he is supposed to be great. You can see the confidence in his game. You can see the edge. And when you're ranked number one, that edge gets judged harder than it would for almost anyone else. That is where his high school path becomes important. It was not a simple, clean, quiet rise. He started at prolific prep, built his name there, and became one of the biggest prospects in the country. Then he went to Notre Dame in Sherman Oaks, where he had a strong junior year on the basketball court. But before his senior basketball season, things got complicated. He withdrew from Notre Dame, and reports around the situation mentioned disciplinary issues and tension behind the scenes. He had also tried playing high school football there too, and that became part of the story too. He played some wide receiver, had a few moments, but reports said there were issues tied to football and suspensions before he eventually moved on. That part of his story matters, but it has to be talked about the right way. This should not be treated like cheap drama or some lazy character attack. He was still a teenager dealing with a ton of attention, moving through big-time basketball environments and carrying the weight of being the number one player in the country. That does not excuse everything, but it does give the situation context. The real question is not whether he has talent. Nobody is questioning that. The real question is maturity. How does he handle pressure? How does he handle coaching? How does he respond when things do not go his way? How does he act when he is frustrated? Those are the things Kansas is going to care about just as much as the highlights. Because the talent is obvious. The body is obvious. The name is obvious. But when you get to college, especially at Kansas, you have to be reliable. Bill Self is not going to care that you were the number one recruit if you are not defending, if you are turning the ball over, or if your emotions are hurting the team. That is where this gets interesting. Stokes' confidence can be a weapon. His fire can be a weapon. His edge can be a weapon, but only if it is controlled. There's a difference between playing with energy and playing out of control. There's a difference between being vocal and letting emotions take over. The best players learn how to use that edge without letting it cost the team. That might be one of the biggest things Stokes has to prove at Kansas. And that is why the Rainier Beach move mattered so much. After the Notre Dame situation, he needed a reset. New school, new team, new environment, and a chance to get the story back on basketball. And that is exactly what he did. At Rainier Beach, he put up huge numbers, won games, and reminded everyone why he was the number one player in the country. That says something, because when a player goes through noise and still comes out playing some of the best basketball of his life, it shows he did not fold, he did not disappear, he did not let the story stay stuck on what happened before. He went to a new place and produced. And he didn't just score. That's the biggest thing. The points were loud, but the all-around game is what really stands out. The rebounds, the assists, the steals, the way he controlled games from different spots on the floor. That is what Kansas is betting on. They're not just betting on a guy who can get buckets. They're betting on a player who can shape the game. The USA basketball part matters too. When you produce with Team USA, that tells you something about how your game works around other good players. It's one thing to dominate when your high school team gives you every shot. It's another thing to play with other elite talent, share the ball, defend, run the floor, and still make an impact. Stokes has been in those settings. He's won gold medals. He's played against high-level competition. That gives Kansas more reason to believe the game will translate. Now, the recruitment itself is a whole different layer. Kentucky had every reason to think it could win this one. Stokes is from Louisville, and when the number one player in the country has Kentucky roots, Kentucky fans are going to feel like he should end up in Lexington or Louisville. That's just how it works. Mark Pope needed a major recruiting win, too, and landing Stokes would have been a huge statement for him. But Kansas came in and won anyway. That is not a small thing. This was not Kansas beating out a random list of schools. This was Kansas beating Kentucky, Louisville, Oregon, and USC for the top player in the class. That sends a message. It says Bill Self still has major pull. It says Kansas still has national power. It says even in this new era with NIL, transfers, and every program trying to buy momentum, Kansas can still sit at the table with anyone and win. The biggest adjustment for Stokes will probably be the half-court game. In high school, he could overwhelm people with size, speed, and strength. In college, those tools still matter, but the windows are smaller, defenders are stronger, help comes faster, coaches scout harder. You cannot just force your way through every possession. That is where his decision-making has to grow. Stokes can pass, but great passers are not just the ones who make flashy plays. Great passers know when to keep it simple. They know when the corner is open. They know when to hit the roll man. They know when to take the shot, when to swing it, and when to reset. That is the next step for him. Sometimes young stars try to win every possession by themselves. They feel the pressure of the ranking. They feel the crowd waiting for something special. They try to make the big play instead of the right play. Stokes cannot fall into that trap. At Kansas, he does not need to prove he is talented every trip down the floor. Everyone already knows. He just has to prove he can play winning basketball. That means defending without gambling, rebounding every night, making the easy pass, taking good shots, staying calm when teams are physical with him. If he does those things, the highlights will come naturally.
He has the personality. He has the NBA buzz. He has the #1 ranking. He has everything around him that makes people watch. Now, he has to turn all of it into real production. The best version of this story is not just Stokes putting up numbers. It is Stokes becoming the tone setter for Kansas, the guy who brings force, the guy who makes the extra pass, the guy who takes coaching, the guy who turns his edge into leadership, the guy who grows up in front of everyone and becomes more than just a talented prospect. Because that is the real challenge here. Talent got him to Kansas. Talent got him ranked #1. Talent got him the attention. But maturity is what will decide what this season becomes. If Stokes buys in, Kansas has something special. Not just a scorer, not just a highlight player, a real matchup problem who can change games in different ways. And if the shot is good enough, if the decision-making cleans up, and if he channels that personality the right way, he could become the face of college basketball fast. That is what makes this so interesting. There are questions, but they are not boring questions. They are the kind of questions that make the season worth watching. Can the #1 recruit handle the pressure? Can Kansas turn his fire into leadership? Can Bill Self get him to play with freedom and discipline at the same time? Can Stokes prove he is not just the best high school player, but one of the best players in college basketball? That is the story. Kansas got the star. Stokes got the stage. Now the whole thing comes down to what he does with it. Because once the season starts, rankings do not win possessions. Hype does not get stops. Recruiting battles do not make shots. He has to defend. He has to rebound. He has to make reads. He has to finish through contact. He has to hit enough jumpers. He has to stay locked in when the game gets hard. If he does that, Kansas might not just have a great freshman. They might have the next face of college basketball.